How's it going, everybody? Thanks for choosing Hollywood Sports again. What I wanted to do right now is show you some gameplay sliders that I've been testing and trying out, trying to improve the game. And these sliders are meant for playing against the CPU. I mean, you can have a league and adjust. You can do these sliders in a league if you want. But yeah, but if you like simulation, I would try these sliders out. I've been testing them out, and I'm going to show you what they look like, and then I'm going to show you some gameplay. So let's just go to game options. You know, you put your favorite team, your offensive playbook, your defensive playbook. You know, this is a custom. The skill level is custom because of the sliders. You know, I like to do game flow as far as the play call style. But it doesn't really matter about your play call style. But I'll show you the sliders in a second. It's 5-minute quarters, coaching tips on. And all these options, game options, you can basically put the way you want. As far as play clock, strategy pad links, accelerated clock on, minimum play time. I got it 18 seconds because sometimes you don't want people to have too much time to make. Because a lot of people play with a lot of audibles, you know, and they want to do a all hot route on every play and invent new plays. So I try not to give them too much time to do that. It's 18 seconds. Camera settings at standard. Auto strafe off and auto sprint off because you want the computer to do their thing. Injuries at 50% because if you're going in higher, it's going to be a lot of injuries in the game. You probably experienced that already. But again, you go to your liking. Fatigue, I leave at 50%. So players can substitute in and out fairly. I guess, again, it's to your liking. Game speed at normal. You know, sometimes I like to put it on slow, but sometimes slow is just too slow. Minimum player threshold. It needs to be at 0. Y'all listening to me? Minimum player threshold is 0. Because if you put this up to a certain level, it's gonna take over your player's rating for block shedding or his speed, how he his pursuit angles. All that will change if you make any adjustments on that, because that will take over your player's attributes. So put it at 0. You want your players to go by their ratings. When you go to your depth chart and look at their ratings, we want them to play to their ratings. Okay, obviously coaching mode is off, and motion sensor function, it doesn't apply because my controller isn't motion sensitive. Okay, let's go to penalties. Offsides I put at 40% because the CPU will cause you to jump off sides all the time, especially in crunch time. It will cause you to jump off sides. And remember, when I say no sliders, I mean the gameplay sliders and the player interaction sliders. Okay, these sliders you're going to need offsides to control the game. So 40% for offside. False starts again at 40%, because if you go any higher, you're going to get a lot of false starts, and that's not realistic in the NFL. Excuse me. The same thing with holding. You're going to have a lot of holding calls in a game if you go anywhere above 40%. So realistically, to get 1 or 2 holding calls a game, that's 40% is about right, but you adjust it the way you want. Face mask, you don't see too many, so you can leave it at 50. Defensive pass interference, leave it the same. A lot of people like to adjust these to 100%, but guess what? When the computer's losing and you're winning, the computer will call that defensive pass interference in you a lot, more than 50% of the time. So leave it at 50, and because the game is the game, we can't fix the game, so all we can do is make some adjustments. Same thing with offensive pass interference. If you raise it above 50, a lot of people like to put it up on 100. When the computer's losing, you will have a lot of offensive pass interferences. Trust me. Kickoff return, leave it at 50. Clipping, leave it at 50. Intentional grounding, leave it at 50, because the game will take over if you go any higher than these. Same thing on roughing the passer and roughing the kicker. But again, you can adjust it the way you want. Okay, here we go. Player skill level. Quarterback accuracy, you need to leave at 50. Because what I tested is, if you put it at 0, his arm is going to be like a noodle. He ain't going to be able to throw that ball nowhere. That ball's just going to fly every which way but loose. So leave it at 50 because the game, it wasn't built that way. So you have to leave the quarterback accuracy at 50. Pass blocking, put at 0. You let your linemen go by their attributes. Their attributes will take over. When you go to your depth chart, those ratings will take over if you put the sliders to 0. If you adjust these sliders up, the sliders will take over your player. Your player will not have any movement to where his numbers go. The sliders will take over because you added sliders. So they're going to take over the attributes of the player's skill. So let those numbers stay at 0, and you'll see the player's skill take over. Wide receiver catching. Now the reason why I have this one at 90 is because the game is, again, there's things wrong with the game. And there's clearly, when you throw a pass, a lot of times they drop open passes. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people have experienced that already. So put it at 90 to make it more realistic. Because when people drop passes, you're looking at probably only about 10% being drops. 90% of the time, they're catches. So leave it at 90% to make it more realistic. Because you're gonna execute a wonderful play and the wide receiver drops the pass open, and it shouldn't happen. That's not realistic. So put it at 90%. Broken tackles. Okay, when your running back has attributes of broken tackles, put it at 0. Because if you don't, the slider will take over the player's rating. So leave it at 0 and let's activate the player's ratings. Trust me, the game's going to play a whole lot better, and I'm going to show you how that's going to work. The same thing with run blocking. Leave it at 0. Those players have run blocking numbers, ratings. Leave it at 0 because when you put the slider on, the slider takes over. That's why when you play online and all these kind of things, all the teams play exactly the same. Block shedding is exactly the same. The blitzing is exactly the same. Everything's exactly the same. Okay? So put it at 0. Fumbles. That's just a part of the game. Has nothing to do with the player interactions. But put it at 40. Because there's a lot of fumbles in this game. And again, Madden is broken. So to make it more realistic, drop it down to 40 or lower if you want less and less fumbles. But realistically, there are fumbles in a football game. So put it at 40. We look at reaction time. Put it at 0. Every player on the field has their own rating. So if you put reaction time and put like it at 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, the player will play to that. And your ratings of that player will disappear. So the reaction time of each player will be, put it at 0 and let them go off their own reaction time. Interceptions. Interceptions, again, is like catching. Sometimes you have clear interceptions and they drop the ball. That's not realistic. In the NFL, 90% of the time, they're going to catch that interception if it hit their hands. And sometimes they drop it. So let's leave that at the 10% chance they would drop it. But 90% of the time, they're going to catch those passes. So increase your interceptions up to 90 if you want realistic play. I'm talking to simulation players right now. Put it at 90% if you want realistic play, because in the NFL, 90% of the time, if that ball hits their hands, it's going to be an interception. Okay? Pass rushing. Okay? A lot of people like to set their defenses up, these nano blitzes and things like that. See, the sliders take over on pass rushing. If you got a good defensive player, let their ratings take over. Let their ratings take over for pass rushing. And then you'll see the real pass rushers in the NFL, like a Orakpo that's on the Redskins. His ratings will take over as a pass rusher. But if you set the slider, his rating will disappear, and then he'll react to whatever you set the pass rushing. You will set his pass rushing skill level. So put it at 0. Don't let the slider adjust his skill level. Let his ratings be his pass rushing skill level. Reaction time, same thing. Leave it at 0, because if you increase the slider, you're going to decide their reaction time. And every player on that field will have the same reaction time. Same way all the time. But if you want all the teams to play different and all the teams to play with their own style, make the reaction time 0, and then all the players will play to their ratings. Trust me. Block shedding. Once you turn block shedding up 20, 30, 50% to 50 or whatever it is, that slider will take over from their rating. They have their rating, it will go to 0 if you put block shedding on. So put block shedding to 0, and then let the players' rating that they're on defense, those players will block shed accordingly and differently, and everybody won't be an all-pro. Okay? Tackling, same thing. Put it to 0. They will tackle based on their rating. Everybody has a tackle rating on defense. So put it to 0, because again, if you increase the slider to a certain number, the slider will take over, because you're telling the sliders, I need to increase my players' tackling, right? So you just eliminated their rating for tackling. So put it to 0. I hope you guys are trying to get what I'm trying to say right now. We want to go to their ratings. Once you put the slider on, their ratings disappear to 0. And then you have adjusted their ratings by turning on the sliders. The CPU skill, again, quarterback accuracy, leave it at 50% because I've tested it. Anything lower than that, their arms get weaker. The ball just goes anywhere. So according to the game, you have to leave it at 50. Pass blocking, again, their offensive line will not be predetermined because you got the slider on. The sliders was what predetermines everything. If you set the sliders at a certain number, the CPU will react to the slider that you set it at. They're gonna know ahead of time what the play is. It's predetermined. Madden has programmed this game to be predetermined on what's happening. Okay, so turn the slider off. Same thing, wide receiver catching. Leave it at 90. Because if you don't, they're going to drop a lot of open passes because the game is kind of broke. Broken tackles. Let your running backs go to their ratings. Because once you increase this slider, if you raise this slider up like this, you're going to increase their chance to break tackles. And they already have a rating for breaking tackles. Every running back in the game will break tackles the same exact way. Or close to it. Same thing with run blocking. You guys are getting it right now. Run blocking, leave it at 0. They have run blocker ratings. Let them use the ratings because once you turn the slider on, the sliders takes over. Fumbles, again, leave it at 40% if you want realistic fumbles. If you raise it higher than that, it's going to be too many fumbles. And if you notice on fumbles, it's predetermined. When you fumble, the offensive team always get it back right away. So you want to lower your fumbles to 40. Reaction time 0. Again, interceptions 90. Pass rushing, let them go to their ratings. Don't turn the slider on. Put it at 0. Because once you turn the slider on, the sliders takes over and the ratings disappear. So let their ratings determine what happens, not the slider. Reaction time 0. Block shedding 0. Tackling 0. Let their ratings take over. All right. Again, the special teams, visual feedback, volume control, and game controls is all up to you. But that was just a quick view of the sliders. And so in my next video, you're going to see some gameplay without the sliders. So I'll talk to everybody on the next video. Take it easy.